Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Institutions of market governance are very important in modern economies, and there is no place in modern economies of the myth that the economies should not be regulated. In fact, as the economies are growing and interlinkages are growing worldwide, regulation has come in very stringent, and the regulation has acquired a place which was never there for it. We have today with us chairperson of a very important regulator in Pakistan, chairperson of the Competition Commission of Pakistan, Rahat Kaunain. She has experience in market governance and securities market and as well. Madam, very warm welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I would straight away ask you to say a few lines for the initial premise.
Thank you for highlighting the importance of regulation in a free market. Somehow people do believe that deregulation means no regulation, but as economies grow, it is very important to have effective regulation in place. And regulators, I think the secret of a good economy and a working economy would be that the regulators are working with full freedom, with autonomy and with accountability. These are the three tests that they must conform to.
Do you think Pakistani market in Pakistan has grown to a place where regulation has become way too important, or the regulator has matured to a level where they can cater?
Well, I would speak for myself. As far as the competition agency is concerned, I think certainly this one agency in a very short time has demonstrated its independence because it has taken actions across all sectors. Now, when you talk about independence and responsibility, independence comes from one, from financial autonomy, and two, from the decisions. Now, in our decisions, if you look at, we have taken actions against most powerful interests, banks, cement, sugar, LPG, and name it. I mean, you will find all sectors there, even state-owned entities. So we have certainly demonstrated independence as far as our decision making is concerned. Now comes financial autonomy. If you do not have financial autonomy, it is very difficult to say that the regulator is autonomous, because a lot of things they do not grow the way they ought to grow. So I think that is, apart from that constraint, certainly this particular agency has demonstrated its independence, its effectiveness, although a lot of decisions that we have taken have yet to stand the test of time in terms of being judicially reviewed. Yet you can see effectiveness in various forms. I mean, the fact that people are coming to us for more advice, more complaints are coming, the number of exemptions processing has increased, mergers applications have increased. This all shows that there is a trend towards compliance.
But the financial autonomy, I personally understand, is still not there, because the 3% fee that has to be levied and given to you, and still the government has not implemented as yet.
Yes, I would say it like this.
Every now and then, every year or so, the regulator has to go to the government and ask for money and keep them supple and all.
This is one of the biggest challenges that I have before. I mean, when I took the charge and assumed 2 years back in July 2010, things that I had to take care of was, one, the act had to be passed by the parliament, because there was a long lingering on the ordinances, 3 ordinances promulgated. So within first 2 months, the first thing that we were able to achieve with effective lobbying, and I think with effective strategy, the act came in 2010 October. So this was our first achievement. The second challenge that was facing us was the appointment of the tribunal, which, as you are aware, that recently has been addressed, and we have been pursuing it and doing advocacy for it very, very aggressively, effectively, as I could say. Third was the pending cases in the courts. Huge cases are pending. They have come up to around 175 cases that are there. That's the challenge that I still continue to face. If I will not have the requisite budget for running such an important institution, how do I sustain? How do you think you can sustain? And most important for any institution is its sustainability. But the regulators, the 5 regulators who have to actually pay the fee, are resisting it. I mean, Perhaps it's a turf war, perhaps it will take time before they come towards compliance, but once they recognize, we have even made progress in that regard. And Ministry of Law has twice endorsed that the legal position taken by CCP is correct.
But still the budget is handled on you.
Yeah, the budget is, the problem is that let's say we had a demand and we had approved a budget of 610 million and the ministry gave us only 200 million.
Before we go any further, for the benefit of those who need more understanding on the competition law, and just a little bit explain for them.
Competition law?
Competition law and how that is taking place in Pakistan, and how you are acting in the given environment which the competition law has created.
Okay. We are working for enhancing economic efficiency of the economy. How do you do that? There are 4 important pillars. One is, number 1, which we call prohibited agreements, which basically takes care of collusive practices and cartelization. Number 2, it's abuse of dominant position. Now, abuse of dominant position is like we are not here against monopolies per se, but we are against abuse of those dominant either monopolies or people who are holding a dominant market share. Third is mergers and acquisitions. In competition law, mergers and acquisitions have a very distinct connotation. It's a much wider definition as compared to companies law, right? It includes acquisition, it includes joint ventures, it includes amalgamation, restructuring and everything. Last is deceptive marketing. Now, all these pillars basically impact on competition. The Section 10 is a very interesting provision which is very close to consumer protection law as well, and it overlaps with 12 other laws in Pakistan. What does it do? It basically bars you to advertise and disseminate information which is false or misleading.
Or deceptive.
Yeah. The people do ask me, how is it relevant for competition? I think it's very much an important pillar of competition, because by marketing and advertising falsely, you get a competitive edge and you harm the interest of your competitors. So from competition aspect it is very much relevant. These are the 4 relevant pillars we revolve around.
What is more difficult in Pakistan, to check abuse of dominance or cartelization?
Well, interestingly, world over, cartelization is something difficult to prove because you need very good evidence for that. Our experiences have been that they have been low-lying fruits in terms of it's a new field. People were not aware, and cartelization was being practiced as a norm. I think people are becoming more and more aware since the time we have started taking actions. Well. So detecting cartelization is not that easy. But I must say, and as I mentioned earlier, our law gives us very effective powers, enforcement powers. And 1 or 2 which I would like to highlight is, we have a search and inspection without warrant, which is critical, because when you carry out a search and inspection and you take away the element of surprise and you're going to the court for the warrant or any processes, that means the element of surprise may actually disappear. 2 is leniency. And I think leniency is one of the very, very important investigative tools which helps in busting cartels, and it is actually one of the major achievements in these last 2 years of CCP that we have had leniency application from one of the multinational companies which came forward, admitted contravention, provided 233 documents to verify our case. And please remember, this all is happening when we have so many cases pending in the courts and people are saying, okay, you are taking decisions, but what effectiveness is it creating? That means basically this leniency application in itself is a proof that CCP's writ is established, that we are recognized as a regulator, and people repose confidence in us and come forward with this kind of an application. And I think I would take this opportunity to clarify to a lot of people who confuse leniency with a sort of a settlement. It's not a settlement. It's you're breaking a cartel through an insider, and by the way, if he is concealing anything, if he is not conceding to seize the cartel that has been formed and he does not cooperate fully, we can even revoke that. So we granted full immunity to this MNC, but
to that person who is an insider,
to that undertaking, which was part of that, which was one of the perhaps prominent,
was the main mover and shaker.
May not be the main, but perhaps important.
Part and parcel.
Yes, very important player. So getting such people helping who help you to break the cartel, imagine what happens. Your whole length of proceedings reduce, right? Even before the judiciary, it strengthens your hands. Because earlier it's only the enforcement agency saying, now one of them stands with you. So, imagine the kind of evidentiary value it brings. So, it's a very, very critical tool and must be valued.
Here we take a short break and we'll continue our discussion forward. Please don't go away.
It's diverse.
It's original.
It's SDTV.
What is the future? How you are looking towards the future? What do you think are the challenges? Yeah. Before we come to some actual cases.
Yeah. Challenges in terms for CCP you are saying, or for the enforcement you are saying?
For enforcement, for the institution basically, for the law and enforcement of the law and acceptance as a norm in market community and all.
I would say there is no reason not to be optimistic, number one. Because if in such a short time we have been able to get recognition for our work internationally, and as you may be aware that for the year 2011, we were nominated as the best enforcement agency by Global Competition Review. And in which region? It was not South Asian region, it was Asia Pacific, Middle East and African region, which means there were 42 agencies and Pakistan was picked up in top 5 out of 42. So I think our performance has been quite incredible. Yes, the challenges that I see are that people should not be losing patience to see what benefit it brings, because they would only see what is our benefit if you've done it and these cases don't get decided. That's one. How does your action translate into benefits for consumer? I think while the benefits are very much there, and I'll discuss the effectiveness and challenges subsequently, I think the visible impact would be there only once there are judicial precedents. And I'm very hopeful that now that the Competition Appellate Tribunal is there, perhaps this would pace up expeditious disposal, because it's likely that the competition appeals would be transferred to the
automatically. And the cases which are already been lying,
or the judges themselves may send, but the writ petitions may still continue with the high courts.
And still the Competition Commission has to run from pillar to post to get the stay vacated.
Yeah,
Despite the appellate court has been appellate tribunal has been formed.
I mean, just recently, you would know, today's news is that the banks have got the penalty suspended in the ATM case. Okay, so we are quite used to, and it is their legal right to get.
But the banks were making a very hue and cry that the penalty is too much and it doesn't come under the competition law. It was a service. The banks were saying it for quite some time.
They can say, anybody against whom you take an action, you don't have to have their acceptability for that, but what you have to see what's happening in the world.
And some other were saying had there been cartelization, that the penalty should have been much more.
Listen. These are statements. I feel, yes, these are statements by people, and I don't know in what context they have said it. But I think what is important to appreciate is this was one action in which the newspapers, in fact, Tribune, Express, and Dawn, they had themselves written and congratulated CCP. Well done, CCP, on this. So they have highlighted it, and they are objective observers, if I may say. You and I can say CCP has done right, and the person against whom I have taken action can say it's wrong. But you have to leave it to the objective assessment.
To the wider judgment.
And to the wider judgment of people. And obviously, what we are saying is, in the ATM issue, 770 million is a debate. If you read the editorials, they think there should be criminal prosecution and this penalty is not enough and this is not sufficient. They are saying it's huge. If you read our order, you would see the reasoning why we have kept it to this extent. Because when you are imposing a penalty, there are various factors you take into account. Now this is pertaining to only 15 rupees charge vis-a-vis that they are charging on a switch fee, not their own bank machine, but when you are using other bank's machine. The whole findings thrust was on this, that they are not applying independent thinking. First they were saying State Bank required us, then it came down, okay, no, it was only an upper ceiling and we presumed it as to be the fixed rate. No, an upper ceiling and a fixed fee are two distinct things. We said, okay, show us, bring something. They should have brought something on record to show that when you are deciding that you are imposing this service fee, what are the factors you have taken into account? A bank which will have, let's say, 250 or 500 ATM machines, their consideration would be different in imposing a fee than those who are only having 50. For that, everyone applying the same actually demonstrated that they were not applying it. They were not applying the independent thinking, and two, there was a role that Link 1 had assumed as per our judgment. It is before obviously the judiciary and they can review it. In our view, they played the front runner's role. That was not in their mandate.
But do you think the smaller banks were getting advantage and the atmosphere of competition was rather increasing? Because if a smaller bank doesn't have an ATM machine in a very far-flung area and still you are not...
We evaluated all various aspects.
So it was weighed?
Everything was weighed. What I'm saying is, no, to say that smaller banks this way was getting more competition is one way of argument. But we would say that if none of the banks were charging anything on the transactions that are taken or carried out on their own ATMs, and that constitutes, let's say, 2/3 of the volumes of transactions, okay? 1/3 is the other part. If 2/3 can be managed without any cost, why was it that nobody was even making or volunteering except Citibank? All the banks, even those banks which were not charging, they started charging, showed that nobody considered it worth, okay, uniform charge it, don't give the benefit. You can consider this is one service that you're offering. Maybe I can offer it free and I can absorb the cost also. I'm not saying it's mandatory, but all I'm saying is, we have also, by the way, referred to the data in the World Bank reports. What is our plight in the banking industry? We see that they are making huge profits, largest spread, having highest interest rates. So they were living
paying less on deposit.
They are basically living in their comfort zones, because these small services constitute different markets, and this is where we must allow and encourage competition.
And then another decision on this health centers, they said that the fine was a little too much and they were giving service which was made mandatory on them by
this is the argument. You see, you have to understand, this is their argument. They say, we've even pointed out in Philippines that they even took away this thing, that why these specialized medical centers should be giving these services. It should be open to all. Now, listen what our concern was. And I think, to be very honest, our penalties are really not on the higher side. If anything, we really try to strike a balance, taking into account each and everything. And by the way, on the fixed fee aspect, we have not even imposed penalty. Where we have imposed penalty is that you are saying this medical centers are divided into 5 regions, and each region which equally have, the medical centers in each region will equally divide the cases. That means what? On price there is no competition, fine. When you say I'll have equal cases, you are living in your comfort zone, not working hard enough, worrying at all about your quality of service.
It's a pool.
It's a pool. It's a pool whether I work or I don't work. I'll still get my assured sum. Do you think that's healthy? And two, there were allegations in the complaints that this is putting consumers to exploitative practices, like you can ask for repeat tests, and the repeat test that is being asked by one medical center, that person has no choice to go to other medical center, he has to keep going to the same medical center. We did notice that the prescribed fee was lower, so that's why we didn't impose the penalty on fixing of fee. But this equal distribution was clearly, this is in competition law viewed as hardcore cartelization, because it eliminates all possible aspects of competition.
And then the dominance that was created and they were abusing it.
You see, when what happens is they are saying it's the Gulf states who have this authority and they have made these rules and regulations, but if you look into the history, they required them such things to be included there. That it is in order to prevent malpractices. Now, two wrongs do not make a right. To prevent the malpractice that people are offering commissions to agents, you are having a contravention of law in place. That does not make sense. So, I mean, I think if you read our judgments, you'll find detailed deliberation on all aspects. Who expresses happiness on being imposed a penalty, or who expresses satisfaction on saying, yes, they did the right thing? I'm not looking for approval.
Yeah, obviously.
A regulator is not supposed to be popular among regulators.
Yeah, if the regulator is not criticized, probably the regulator is not doing his job.
So, and fine, it's healthy criticism. I'm not saying at all that we are not capable of making mistakes. All I'm saying is that we try our best to keep, we review all best practices, we review these relevant case laws, we apply them to the best of our abilities, and if there's a possibility that we may still go wrong, then obviously there is a judicial review there and we'll stand guided.
Here we take a short break, and after the break we'll obviously continue our discussion, so please stay with us.
It's diverse.
It's original.
It's SDTV.
Welcome back. Very interesting discussion is going on. Obviously, I'm looking forward to ask you a few questions, what your focus is and how you have been doing at an institution. But first, on the cases we are doing, there's a hue and cry sometime that the fine is huge. I remember that there was a hue and cry that the fine on the cement was huge. And India has come up with a fine which is much more than fine which was taken here. And then they moved to the high courts, and there's a stalemate because high days. Do you think there is a way that the Competition Commission should vacate that stay or something? Well, for example, I'm asking, there was a very famous case of whistleblowing by the telecom companies, insider, and it was all furnished and evidence was there. Leniency, as you say one of them, but it is pending. It is marooned in the High Court. And the High Court is saying that first we are going to decide the sugar case, and then we are going to decide that, and neither of them.
I don't know if the courts have said that they would decide first the sugar case or not. But you see, the only way that is available to CCP is to pursue in its ordinary course with lot of zeal and persuasion the legal recourse that is available to us. That is the way we can pursue it. And if you dig out all the cases, I mean, you would find it out that I don't think ever we would have been seeking adjournments at our end. The cartels can hire heavyweight lawyers, and there's so many lawyers. One of them, if one is not available, the other can request for adjournment, and this is part of legal procedures. I mean, I want to be very fair. Ordinarily, even anywhere else, it would take 2 to 3 years. Okay, we may take a bit longer owing to the backlog of the cases than the burden that there is on the courts. But I do believe that there can be a constitution of a bench, particularly for the writ petitions now that the tribunal is there, and which can decide matters of economic importance on priority. I think that is very important. Now, we have imposed penalties worth 8 billion. I'm sure the penalties imposed by FPR and PTA would be even worth much more. So, if these cases are taken on top priority, it would be really helpful in translating what is the significance of our enforcement actions for an ordinary person.
And determining future behavior.
Yes, and creating real deterrence, because deterrence would not. For instance, in cement case, I was on the bench with Khalid Saab, and the order that we passed, we imposed 6.4 billion. Oh, the cement industry was, yes, all hue and cry, what have you done, and this is, we got our calculations done by one of the economists, and it turned out that it was 19% of the penalty imposed. So 19% of the profits earned in a year. What was it? Nothing.
4 rupees per bag.
Nothing, right? So what happens is that you now look at Indian case, and by the way, while you all may know that India has imposed such a huge penalty, their Director General in his inquiry has relied on our case.
As
our
a
judgment.
precedence.
Yes, as a precedent. It has drawn a lot of strength from our case. I think that is something that needs to be acknowledged as well. We have done some good work. Secondly, when we took that action, subsequently again based on the information received by one of the informants, we carried out search and inspection of 2 or 3 companies, one of Association and then Cohort Cement and other companies. Right now, we were only conducting an inquiry after the search and inspection, scrutinizing those documents. And I receive from the Ministry of Industries, there was a meeting called, and since I was not in the country, my Director General went. And I receive a letter where it says that CCP should restrict itself to advisory role and should not become a police constable. Well, what else an enforcement agency is? I'm supposed to be perhaps a policing
doing
force,
policing.
right? So that's one perspective. You wonder. We gave our stance to the Ministry of Finance. They even proposed to form a committee in which I would be a member, which I regretted. I said, I'm sorry, I cannot be a part of it because my mandate does not permit me of bringing changes in the law. We have hardly, in the 5 years we have been enforcing law. How can you ask to sit, that we should sit with these whom we are purportedly calling stakeholders? I think they have vested interests. People having vested interests are not stakeholders. Let's be very clear about it.
They have their stakes.
They have their stakes, but they have vested interests as well. So they should not be there in any dialogue. They should be objective parties over there. And at the stage of inquiry, right now the inquiry has not even been concluded and stay has been granted. What do I do? In the telecom case, in the telecom case, the show cause is issued, we get a stay. We've been pursuing, we've got a very competent lawyer pursuing it, but we don't get any conclusion. We have leniency case. Now, leniency case, by the way, is very different from all of these. Leniency case is not at a stage of a prima facie stage. Leniency case means the case is established. What we have done is being endorsed by one of the insiders. Still the stay is not, and still the stay is not being vacated.
But it's a major bottleneck. It's a limbo where the traffic jam is there. Do you think something has to be done, or some in the law? Do you think automatically they'll be transferred to the appellate court now?
No, I can't think.
Because writ is a legal concept.
The courts can decide that the appeals should be transferred to the tribunal, but there will be other issues, because in many cases the lawyers have even questioned the constitution of the tribunal itself. Okay. The constitutionality of ordinance was challenged earlier. There are certain provisions in the act which are also constitutionally challenged. Now they will challenge the constitutionality of the tribunal. All these things have to be obviously decided by the courts. So that fight and friction will remain. But how long will these parties with vested interests be able to prolong it? Eventually, I am of a strong belief that things will get concluded and then things will start flowing in a much better way. But what I was about to say was, look, if the merger applications are more, if the exemption applications are more, if complaints are coming to us more, if there is 100% compliance in the OFT cases, obviously we are making a difference. Obviously there is an impact. Yes, it will be far more visible in a much stronger way once the decisions are judicially reviewed.
So what is up? What is up? What is there in the next 2-3 years? What are you doing?
Well,
what is the vision?
I have
for the next
now,
3 years?
my term would be for another year, because the term is for 3 years. I've finished my 2 years. My focus as far as...
But you can seek another term as well, if I'm not
I don't have to seek it.
I mean, it's not being sought, but they can appoint you for...
No, that's their choice. But right now what I'm saying is...
It is 2 terms now?
No, it's 1. No, there's no bar and even 5 terms.
Initially it was...
No, that's with SCCP that you can have initially 2 terms or something.
It should be barred or no?
No, there's no bar. There's no bar.
There is no
in our law, there is no
bar.
So far you are 65 and...
But then the government would be all at you if there is no bar. No, don't you think so?
All at you what?
I mean, then you have to go to the government to get another term. I mean everyone in the commission.
No, it's like this, that we complete our terms and it's the Ministry of Finance.
Government can dominate then, no, don't you?
It always happens, you know, with all
because
these competition
if the
agencies.
fixed terms, in second terms, sometime, you know, the governor state banks and the chairperson and the chairman in their second term, concluding term, they become very powerful and give good decisions. This is
No, I don't think so. To be honest, that you have to be in your second term to give powerful decisions at all. I mean, I don't know about this. But what I'm saying is, in the next 1 year, my focus would remain, one, I'd be pursuing, as I have been in the past, on attaining financial autonomy for the Commission, because that's very important. And you see, apart from the enforcement focus, one thing that I do feel good about is that we are the first agency in Pakistan, and perhaps the only one in South Asia, which volunteered itself for independent international third-party evaluation. See, we've been submitting ourselves for the last 2 years, and we've been getting fair rating, and then this year they said it's impressively consistent. So it's not what I am saying. It's not what you are saying. It's a third party which evaluates you according to your, and you know, in that way we lose. I lose because I have a very small budget. I lose because my decisions have not yet been reviewed by, you know, it has not been endorsed, or nothing has come out of it so far. These are the points which are not in my domain. My rating would improve if the tribunal or the court decides whatever. If obviously we have a decisions which are endorsed, then my rating would perhaps also go up.
Obviously.
So these things do impact on us as well, on our performance. But where I have been also focusing a lot for sustainability, it's having most important is having competent professionals. And like when I took the charge, there were 3 with economics background. Now I have 8. There was not one qualified chartered accountant. Now I have 3, and I have ACCA people, finance background people. So I'm focusing a lot on making the institution internally robust. That's important. And I have a very bright team. I must say that nobody can deliver without a team. If you think that it's one person's achievement, it's not so. It's always a team behind, and it's the team work that has been able to get us. Actually, we have been working with so much synergy because we all pool in our resources, and then a better product comes out.
Obviously, it was a new institution in a way.
And my financial constraints have been a lot, and I've been considerably able to.
They're still there.
And they're very much there. But notwithstanding that I reduced the operational costs substantially. I mean, in 1 year, in the preceding year, we reduced it to 35%. So that in itself is also an achievement.
As a head of an institution, I would like you to give you an opportunity to say something on what is your mandate, if you want to add something.
People often ask that what is the vision of CCP? What are you working towards? And I think it is our desire, and we are working towards making Pakistan a globally competitive country. You are not competitive only because you are competitive in Pakistan. You have to achieve that milestone, that benchmark where you can compete globally. And I think that is, for that, we all need to work really hard.
The final question is, why did you invite Prime Minister in a conference? I mean, the Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani.
Why shouldn't I be invited?
He should not be. He's a politician.
No,
he's
he is
a politician.
The head of,
the Competition Commission is purveyor of integrity, and the politicians
your head of state would be against that.
I mean,
I think that, I'm sorry, I totally disagree with your view, and I think anyone. I'm actually amused with the question, I must say. I think that he symbolized being the head of state, and I think at national level his participation meant that competition agency enjoys certain value. You know, getting that kind of commitment, and it was just not the PM, the finance minister was there for 2 days. We got our assurance for the tribunal, we got our assurance for the 3% fee. The international community went so impressed that our government takes competition agency, which is so young, so seriously. It actually signaled such positive things about Pakistan that you have no idea to imagine. And by the way, your independence is not at all. Who thinks that CCP is not government? CCP is an arm of the government to promote good governance.
No, if you are doing good things, which you are, Obviously.
Yes,
and you enjoy a reputation.
Yes, yes.
You don't need anyone
No,
from the government side because...
No, you're absolutely, I think there's a difference of views and I don't agree with it at all for the simple reason. I think...
No, you must have some prudence.
Yes. And the prudence in it, I'm telling you, is that when nationally, at the highest level, you get your attention, you get your assurances, you communicate. It was an international conference. You communicate to the international community, look, in such a small time, this is the kind of attention we have been able to get. This is how we have marked our presence. And that also actually dispels any kind of thinking that government is against you. If you look at it, the fact that the law came into place speaks about the political will, doesn't it? And you must. I think there's a popular syndrome, I would say, that if you speak against government, you are independent. I have no such political inclinations. I don't believe in that. I think as a professional, as a regulator, you cannot deny that you are an arm of the government. You must maintain your independence and you must be professional. I have not so far heard anything, at least to this end, where you would say that Competition Commission is not an independent agency.
So you totally dispel the impression that...
Yeah, totally. I think nobody has ever mentioned that. You're the first one who mentioned it. So.
Thank you very much for sparing your time. I think it was very important. It would, as for the general public, it was quite an information. So thank you very much for sparing your time.
Thank you so much for inviting. Thank you.